My project is called Ceremonial Romance. A typical contemporary wedding often involves heavy financial costs. Therefore, many young couples refuse to get married. In response to declining romance and birth rate in China, the project proposes a syncretic overlap between a public park and a wedding venue in Beijing. My research investigates different typologies and rituals of Chinese wedding, and I'm questioning whether there is a kind of architecture allowing different wedding forms and social forms to coexist. There is a tendency to occupy public infrastructure for their own private wedding. This is a miniature version of a contemporary wedding. The romance between homosexual couples is excluded from legal system in China. Thus, they are getting married in Utah over Zoom. Marriage officer borrow domestic elements from Utah kitchen to officialize the couples. In a rented apartment in Guangzhou, the couple rearranged their everyday furniture to form a wedding hall. Although the wedding is fragmented, it remains the recognizable form of a typical Western wedding. An LGBT fake wedding in China redefined traditional wedding roles to provoke discussion on gay marriage, using minimum wedding symbols to blend wedding types with new social expressions. Village weddings, less influenced by urban transformation, remain traditional. Villagers built a tent by the groom's house, treating the public street as a communal living room without the urban concept of public. They collectively prepared the wedding banquet. The groom picked up the bride to the banquet hall. This ritual, borrowed from imperial wedding, symbolized the groom's intention to bring the bride into his life and the family. The bride and groom cross a threshold together. The temporary gate imitates the symbolic surface of imperial palace. Traditional building featured with flexible structures and open facade. Domestic space becomes ceremonial, allowing parade to pass through. The corridor is indicated by a series of decorated gates and red carpets. The main ceremony happens within the ancestor hall, exchanging vows and offering tea. Wedding banquet to treat all the guests. Different from the hierarchical imperial feasting, the seating at contemporary weddings is determined on the closeness to the couple. This is a visual summary of imperial, village, and city hotel wedding. The three weddings remains a continuity in signifying the ceremonial aspects, the central access symmetry, red carpets and the stage, and also the gates as backdrop. The logic of seating arrangement and social roles has changed. In imperial wedding, the social structure is hierarchical. Food and wine is served by eunuchs according to strict protocols. Similarly, in city wedding, all services are provided by wage labor, while in villagers voluntarily come to help out of a reciprocal relationship. Exclusively for this new couple, the villagers occupy the void courtyard in front of village committee. They set up tents, mass cooking area. People borrowed utilities from public infrastructure. Similarly, in another village, the villagers take turns to appropriate the public sports hall for their own wedding. They removed the sports facilities, decorated the hall with wedding elements. Each household bring a table there and starts to prepare the big pot dishes collectively. On the one hand, these villages share the street, plaza, and sports hall in common, and take turns to stage their personal wedding experience on a reciprocal basis. And in return, the wedding ceremony reinforced the reciprocal system. On the other hand, the symbolism distilled from imperial Chinese weddings transformed banal structures into ceremonial space, directly relating to the way it reproduced social order. The familiar and institutionalized form of the imperial wedding is repurposed to explore new social structures, such as varying gender identities and non-monogamous relationships. Similarly, the reciprocal systems observed in village also act as another vehicle to encapsulate these emerging social dynamics. I abstract the principle and architectural elements from imperial wedding, different typologies of permanent gates and hall allowing parade to pass through, temporary archway for wedding only, and also platform and stairs to provide focal points for ceremonies. With the number of newlyweds in Beijing decreasing, the government starts to promote childbirth rate and public weddings. Street parks in the city could be reappropriated into wedding infrastructure to make weddings more affordable and accessible. The project sits on a park island between highways near residential areas in Beijing. The overall plans hijacked the layout of Forbidden City, central access reserved for wedding processions, with clearance for rituals. The two peripheral walls carry kitchen utilities, the back-of-house labor form for both wedding and everyday life. However, the symmetrical layout is no longer serving for the hierarchical structure. Instead, it proposes a more horizontal system. It invites unbounded access, allowing the public to use the park facilities, observe the ceremonies, or even participate in the wedding preparations. The syncretic types are wedding hall and typical elements, plantations, and public park infrastructure. The ceremonial form of the wedding infrastructure will activate the existing common activities, such as plaza dance and chess play. The newlyweds begin their journey with a recognition corridor, receiving blessings from both sets of parents. The playground and ceremony space overlap with each other. People who help the wedding can dine at tennis court as well. A metal fence is formed into an outdoor sofa for offering tea ritual. Behind the fence, preparations for a collective wedding banquet are underway. The bride's room is assembled from exercise equipment, while wedding symbolism is imposed on normal park furniture. The park's basketball court mesh and bench is repurposed as a backdrop for the ceremonial space. Outdoor gym equipment was joined to form a wedding bed and dressing table. Then they step into the ceremonial courtyard. The peripheral roof serves as an amphitheater, allowing even strangers to witness weddings. When there is no wedding, it's an open-air theater for daily use. Inside the ceremony courtyard, invited guests would sit around a tennis table facing the garden platform where the young couple stage their own personal romance. On the one side is the groom's family, on the other side of the net is the bride's family. Chinese weddings normally take place during daytime. However, to align with Utah marriage office, same-sex couples have to hold their weddings at midnight. Friends and family from both parties are seated on either side of the badminton court. Utah wedding, park plaza, and badminton court overlapped. The form of the theater is a reinterpretation of traditional Chinese palace roof. Looking from outside, it signifies the wedding ceremony. The roof of the courtyard blurs the boundaries between inside and outside. It also hides the upper parts of the ceremonial courtyard, sending subtle ritualistic signals, allowing taboo weddings. The pattern of ceramic tile facade is borrowed from symbolic patterns from imperial weddings archway. Using slip casting, local artisans in Beijing collectively crafted each ceramic tile. To conclude, the wedding tour from imperial weddings transforms space structure into ceremonial venues. In Beijing, young couples temporarily privatize park, performing wedding labor collectively and reciprocally. This makes weddings more accessible and affordable. Ultimately, this syncretic overlap between public parks and wedding venues allows for experiment with new social structures and even taboo forms of marriage.